Hey guys, welcome back to Colab Talks. We are joined by Ray Porras, who is a dear friend and a mentor to me. And there's something interesting about him. He's actually mentored over 1,000 students and internationally and even in state and helped them get to the right program in the right colleges. He's a kind friend and a mentor to me and has served in amazing institutions like University of California Extension, ITU, and California Institute of Advanced Management. And this conversation is all about having the right sync between the instructor and students to actually get a very good success for students and even a collaborative environment. So nonetheless, let's jump right in. And by the way, if you've not smashed the subscribe button, please do it. We're getting the second episode of this one next week. So stay tuned. And for now, let's begin with the conversation. Off to you, Ray. A little about yourselves, and let's talk more.
Sure. So, as Akash mentioned, I do have some educational background, or I'd say almost about 8 years now. I've worked for a couple different schools, ranging from professional education to degree programs. And for me personally, what I believe in programs and what strengths that they can bring for students is a lot of career development, hands-on experience. Those are the types of programs that I've worked at, and those are the programs I love to work at because I strongly believe that they bring the strongest benefit for students. I work mostly international fields. I work with a lot of international students. Akash is one of the international students I had the pleasure of meeting while I worked in Santa Clara. And yeah, we've kept in touch since.
It is, yeah. I think so. Initially, when we first talked, we exchanged a lot of emails, right? Before I was coming over at Santa Clara in the university, and Ray was one of the guys who just had all this experience packed in. He had a lot of answers to a bunch of my questions initially. So it was really interesting to meet him personally, and yeah. So I have a question for you, Ray.
Sure.
We are seeing this like even after pandemic, right? There's this whole rising of remote learning now. This is new concept. We recently did a video about it, and it said that okay, we are entering a historical change, and it's one of the biggest experiments in the country where a lot of these institutions are trying to go remote. They're coming up with these hybrid programs and whatnot, and so remote learning or as we say online learning, it's been there for some time now, right? We had these passive online courses where there's just a recorded monologue and students have to see it, go on their own pace. We had some live classes such as Coursera or edX, right? Just technically is that the same monologues, but it's more live and students can interact through chat box. And then we have the traditional learning, the in-person, the on-campus learning. So I was really intrigued, and since you have had this experience, right? You recently also went remote with your institution. So what's the caveats? Like, what are the plus and minuses for these?
Oh God, there's so many plus and minuses in these fields. Actually, funny, as a recent, one of the projects I have right now is to contact pretty much every student in the program that I'm working on right now. And we're actually getting their feedback on how's the online program going versus the remote, or how's the remote program going versus when you were on ground, you have a preference. And from the student side, I'll say right now that there's a large range of answers. And it really depends on what the student is looking for to get out of the program. And it depends on what kind of students your program's majority consist of. So for example, right now the program I'm with deals mostly with working professionals. So these are people who may already have a bachelor's or master's degree from some previous university. They're working full time while also trying to earn an MBA program, whether it's the second or the first MBA. For those type of students who are much more on a time crunch, they prefer the online modality. The reason being that it's much easier for them when it comes to commuting, especially when you live in a big city.
Sure.
And it's much more convenient for them. I can watch classes at my own pace when I have the availability, whether that's early in the morning or late at night. On the opposite side of that, you have students who benefit much more when it comes to the on-ground. And I think just because growing up, most of the population took classes on ground, that's just what we've accustomed ourselves to.
Exactly.
So we're already in that mindset. I've taken classes in person with a teacher in front of me for 10 plus years, for
Right.
15 years, for longer. So it's really hard to get it out of your head thinking, no, this is how I've always learned it. This is how I have to learn it.
Right.
So when they make that transition to online, they kind of set themselves back a little bit. They might immediately think this isn't going to be as entertaining. This isn't going to be as engaging. I'm going to fall behind. So already they come off with that mindset saying that I'm going to not do as great as I would be if this was in person, which a lot of times I found to be false. Students, if they find that this is a subject that they really jumped into because they found it engaging, then they'll continue to be engaging on their own time.
Right.
So those are the trade-offs. One of the other big trade-offs is exposure and connection that students can make. When you're on ground, you have students who make connections in person with their instructors, with their peers. A lot of the times you hear how students will keep in touch with the instructors even after they finish whatever class they were teaching, or they'll build a cohort themselves. Maybe they found the group that they really like in their class and find, oh, we're all in the same degree program. Let's enroll in classes together. Let's do projects together. Let's help each other.
Right.
So you lose a bit of that when you go to the online modality. So those are the pluses and the minuses of that. Yeah.
Perfect. I got it. In fact, it brings me, so the one that you mentioned about having, the advantage of being together and then communicating and then creating things together, right? The social interactions, as we say. So I was really interested to know, like, how does this even carry out? Because I'll tell you, for Udemy or for any other online like recorded classes, right? I'm not just targeting Udemy, sorry about it. But one of the earliest things that I learned over there was I could just pick and play any program, right? That was a thing. And then again, when we touch flexibility, I could do it in my own pace. One of the major things I found out was something that you mentioned right now. There was less, I think so, least social interactions. Just as you said, if I wanted to collaborate, if I wanted to create projects together, it was extremely hard for me, because now all I had was some kids at a Q&A forum, and that forum was just left to me, and all I had was just like, hey, what's up? Can I just know the answers to this? And probably if it's available, someone's available, they'll jump in, they'll give me the answers, and then they're just off. And it sort of created, I don't know, a disconnect. And obviously, I think so back in like the pre-pandemic part was one when, online was trying to get on a mature level where everyone would adapt it. And it seemed really like untouchable point at that point of time. So I definitely agree on this. One of the things I think with the hybrid classes, and I'd like your input on this, is hybrid offers, again, both in person and online, right? There's this other type of hybrid which is live, and then there are recorded courses as well. So what do you think, is there any sort of benefit to it in terms of, again, all these collaborations, flexibility? Because the pace sort of changes, right? If I have, let's say, out of 10 sessions, 5 of them are recorded and I'm just watching it in on pace, but then again, I have a hard stop at maybe a specific day, and then from there it's just going to be live, right? What do you think? Does it make sense in having that sort of curriculum or that sort of pattern? What's your input on that?
So again, we go back to thinking about the pluses and minuses that come with this. Of course, the big plus being the flexibility that it offers. A big minus, I'd say, is that the knowledge you're taking in from the professor, whoever the presenter is at the time,
right?
You don't have a lot of involvement with that. For example, if you're in a classroom setting, whether it is a synchronous session online, a live instructor, or whether it's in person, if there's something you don't quite understand, you have some power to get the instructor's attention and open a discussion on whatever that topic is. versus if you are just watching a recording, you kind of just have to rewind the recording as many times as it takes for you to get it. And there may not be a point where you get it. You just keep rewinding and are just wasting your time. You're thinking, I don't understand this part of the presentation. I don't understand how this part connects. And maybe it's just because the instructor maybe the instructor misspoke, or maybe there's just something that's just not clicking.
Right.
That's a big minus. So I feel like there has to be something to subsidize that. If you're going to be having a program where half of it or the entire program will be recorded lectures, there still has to be an option where students can have an opportunity to ask those questions. A lot of times in universities, professors will have office hours. Just because you're not in ground doesn't mean you can't have office hours. They could schedule Zoom meetings with their professors. They can have a specific day and specific hours blocked off just for their students and dedicate that additional time. So I feel like that definitely has to be addressed. If that gap is not subsidized, then the students may still continue to fall behind.
I agree. In fact, I just it reminds me of an incident that happened back when I was learning one of the courses. This is, I think so, in 2015. I was learning iPhone apps development, iOS, and it was Objective-C and Swift, so programming technically. And it's an interesting memory. So it was a record program, and he was one of the most decorated and celebrated instructors back then. And since it was recorded, so all his recorded lectures, right? They were really good, really affluent. And then there was one live session, and things stopped working for his computer. And oh my God, he was like frantic. It's like, come on, why doesn't this work? What's happening here? And it was really interesting to see. So like the whole conversation shifted from, okay, you are so calm and composed, to, hey, what's happening here? So that was one. But yeah, coming back to this point of having office hours and communicating, I think one of the biggest thing that's one of the most rising thing that I see that's happening since pandemic is collaborative learning. Or even before that, it was really this collaborative learning. This concept is employed by a very specific set of schools, and I've barely seen it. But yes, there's this concept, and people are trying to understand it. Even College Board, they are trying to employ this with their own set of programs, and they're piloting it, this year. But yeah, I think so. This is what collaborative learning is. When there's a set of group, and you have, as you said, right, there's a certain involvement. There's a say in what you're learning, what you're doing, right? You can, more than interactions, it's about having this tight chain of thoughts together, and having things progress as you do. That's what I feel is into this part. And so I think slowly we're moving into this collaborative part, where it's not just the instructor who has the on the driver's seat, but again, we are the co-drivers for with the instructors itself. That's what I think with collaborative learning. I think so. I want to touch on something. Let me pull up a slide for you, and let's go through that. Right? Sure. Again, traditional and online, we have this tiff between both of them. But then, how does it help for someone who's trying to switch careers? I'm really interested in so one of the first things I saw recently, earlier this year, or even 2021, was a lot of these online ed tech companies. They're trying to come up with this narrative of, hey, we have a project-based approach, or we'll try to help you switch careers. And even before that, I think so, there were programs that said, go from 0 to 1, or be a 0 to hero in Python or in anything. And that's one of the most interesting things. But how does it even help while switching careers? And I think so, you are the right person to know, because at the University of California, right, where we were learning, a lot of people, a major chunk of people, were there for switching careers. They were already professionals with some sort of experience. And how would both of these either benefit, or what's the game here? Share some light for us. Yeah.
Sure. So to go a little more detail on that, yes, one of the programs I worked at was focused specifically on certificate programs. They were short-term programs, usually about 9 to 12 months. And their goal was to get a student in, regardless of what their background was, and then at the end, get them a certificate with actual practical knowledge. The program really prided itself in developing courses and certificate programs that kept up with whatever the job market demanded. So if whatever the program, I don't have an engineering background myself, so I'll just use this as an example. But if a new programming language is trending, if some new development is in data analysis, the program would aim to offer that course, teach those skills, and then at the end of it, the student could offer to sort of employers, this is what I've learned, this is what I can, this is what I know that this is a new skill that's been out for maybe a year, and now I can implement it in my work.
Right.
So I worked with students who were on two sides of kind of the same coin. There were the students who had years of experience in this field, but they wanted to upgrade their skills. And then we had the students who were either brand new, maybe just out of college, or their relevant experience was related to another field. Maybe for a lot of times I saw people who were in a business related program and wanted to go to something related to computer science or vice versa. Now, when it came to how they benefited from the program, online versus on ground, most of the time, and this is going back to, we've been at school in person for, most of our entire lives. Most of the time, students felt more comfortable with taking classes on ground. They felt like I'm going to be participating actively in a discussion with a real professional who's teaching these materials. I'm going to be surrounded by peers who are also interested in learning about this subject. And I'm going to have my work reviewed by these instructors and these peers in person in real classroom settings. So when it came to wanting to learn new skills or making career change, those students believe that they would benefit more when it came to on-ground courses versus those who are more experienced. Those who are more experienced tend to lean more towards the online side, going back to the convenience of it. For a lot of them, they already have a job in the industry that they're already in the industry. So they're just looking to brush up those skills. They might already be working full time. So then they're going to want to aim more towards the course that's going to be much more flexible to their schedule versus someone who's making career change or starting off a new career. It could be for a variety of reasons. If they're fresh out of college, they may not have as many other commitments. If maybe they were unfortunately recently laid off, then they have some extra time to focus more on academics. So those are, just from my experience, what I've seen in terms of the preferences for those with experience versus non-experience when it comes to these fields.
I see. Holding on to that thought, I have one of the quotes by Dyson, the Sir James Dyson, the creator of Dyson appliances, and I'd like to pull it up for you. So I think so. Yeah. Before I do, I had to talk about community, and I think so. We touched it a little bit, but one of the things that interested me with Colab that we run right now is we run a very tight community between instructors, students, the guests who are on the show. There's networkers, and so it's a very open space, and we can sort of explore all the territories, right? There's collaboration. There's people can jam for projects. There are ways where people help each other, and it's a very good cross communication between two different programs as well. On contrary to what we have with very traditional online stuff, where even if there's a forum, only folks who are enrolled in that specific program can interact with each other. I mean, if I'm learning programming and I have an idea to work on, I could reach out to someone in some who's learning startups or who's enrolled in startups. Might be, if I'm in startups, I might get some insight from someone who's already graduated through finance program, or I could maybe just collaborate with them to understand more pricing and other structures. And that used to happen while I was at, I was on campus, right? We do have these breakout rooms where we understand, we sort of blend in, we get to know more people and so on and so forth. But how does like this, but this is for what Collab does. Like Collab is an overall collaborative learning, right? But for the transition, how is it even affecting people? What do you think? The community part, where now it's sort of limiting everyone to their own specific circle for whatever they're learning. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, you can shed some light on that.
Sure. So for when it comes to the online modality of it, you kind of have to break it down to what kind of people are attracted to the online modality. It could be people who prefer to work at their own pace and on their own projects.
Right.
If that's the case, then you're in a class of say 30 people, and let's say half the people are in that mindset where I'm taking this class online. I want to take the knowledge I want to apply to my own projects. I'm going to work at this at my own pace. Maybe I want to get far ahead of everyone else in the course. Maybe I'm doing 5 homework assignments ahead of everyone else. That type of environment, if that really is a good chunk of people who go with the online modality, doesn't go for a very good collaboration, especially when you have someone who is more new to the field, who's trying to pick up these new trends. So the concern is you could have someone who is then trying to reach out to people in their class who maybe wants to form some camaraderie, who wants to actually get to know their peers, who wants to learn more about the area that they're studying. But if you have people who select online programs for the purposes of, I really want to be a little more secluded and I want to learn this at my own pace, there's nothing wrong with that. But then you have people who maybe pick the online program because this is the only opportunity I have because of my schedule.
Right.
Then it really feels like they're missing out on a big part of what education has to offer on the collaboration part.
Exactly.
They don't get to feel the collaboration of it, and they may not get the full experience of the program out of it. Right. So I feel like a part of the responsibilities of programs that make or schools that make online programs is to still, even though people are social distancing, even though people may not be meeting in person, to still structure the program in a way that at least requires the students and the instructors to engage with each other. Maybe it's reviewing their own assignments, maybe it's reviewing homework, maybe it's creating discussion boards. If that's not involved, then these students are missing out on a big part of the when it comes to the online modality.
I completely agree on that. Yes, and I think so, and that's the reason this whole part of collaboration and community, this whole narrative is I think so, is starting to pick up now, and people are trying to. I think so. Even in the startup community, besides education or these verticals or these domains, I think so a lot of people are trying to pick up this part where it's much about community and collaboration rather than just staying aloof, because again these have its like benefits, right? And then so yeah, so that was one of the things. But coming back to Dyson, I have a quote for you, and I want to know your thoughts on that. I think so we discussed this earlier on one of the previous calls, but yeah, we need to go through it again. So Ray, what do you think? This is posted in one of the interviews by Sir James Dyson himself, and there were a lot of questionnaires for him, one of which was a question posted up by by a person was that they don't have experience, but they're really curious, genuinely curious about learning something, right? And would that make them at least eligible for some sort of success? And the answer to that was that lack of experience and curiosity clubbed together can be game changing. And that's what even I'm trying to ponder on, that what's the overall concept here? What's lack of experience and curiosity? I mean, before I pass it to you, some of my pointers would be that I'll take example of Apple. Apple, one of the proclaimed innovative companies, and they try to make one of the best things. And I think for them to innovate would be much difficult. And I think so this is going to create some sort of controversies with our viewers, but hey, it is out there and I'm going to say it. It might be possible that and that's happened. We have seen it with their products and everything. There's a limitation to the innovation that maybe a big tech giant is coming up. And the reason is because it's been in the business for so long. I think they have a certain set of blueprint right now to work on something, right? And they have perception. They know that, okay, they want to go through a certain specific path and carve out a new product or whatnot. But what if, so that actually kills curiosity. A lot of education, a lot of intelligence kills curiosity. Sir Albert Einstein said it. So I think for someone who's now thinking, okay, what if I want to make a phone out of a flat sheet of glass? I think so they would still be more persistent to just find out something. They might fail, but who knows? There would be some sort of eureka moment, right? So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I definitely think there's a lot of benefit that comes from the experimenting side of it. And I think that, I mean, at some point, everybody has a starting point in whatever field that they're going to be joining, in whatever industry that they decide to go into. So there's always some level of curiosity that happens within that person that gets them to join that field. Mm-hmm. Now, the danger that comes with killing curiosity can start as early as the education, unfortunately. Right. If you're joining a program, if you are studying from people who have been in industry for 30 plus years, then great, you're learning from an individual, a very seasoned individual. But then the problem becomes that you're learning some trades in the industry that might be 30 years old, and
right, I agree.
That's not very innovative.
Right, true.
So, and then that just kind of builds off of each other. You have the education side where this is what you're learning in the classroom from someone who's been working or teaching in this industry for 30 plus years. Then it goes on to, okay, you're applying for jobs. This is the job description. It's the same job description, or it's very similar to what it's been for maybe more recent, but 5-10 years. They're not just asking you to follow a specific script, but they're also expecting you that once you join the company, to stick with whatever they're assigning you.
Exactly.
They're going to be saying, this is what we do. This is what we've been doing. This is what works. Right. So this is what we want you to continue to do.
Right.
That kind of kills the innovation side of it by not allowing someone to experiment. I understand that there's, obviously the risks exist. So you really have to balance, is something worth taking the risk? But a lot of the times, you can find a lot of payoffs just by taking those risks. Whether it's not a successful product, at least you learn something from it.
Sure.
Maybe that unsuccessful product inspires the next successful idea.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that as long as you're giving individuals that room to experiment and grow, and most importantly, allowing them to fail, because as long as there's experimenting around, there's going to be a lot of failures. Companies, educators, they have to be okay with their students making mistakes, with their employees making mistakes, not reprimanding them for that, and then giving them an opportunity to learn from those mistakes.
I agree.
That'll keep the innovation alive.
True. That definitely works. And I think that's, I have one other thought that came up. Again, this is another incident, and that happened in reality. I think so just about a year ago. So there's this programming library that was published by an individual. And there was a company, and probably this is unrelated to this, but I had to say this. And because of the experience part, right? So some of the job posters had posted that, okay, fine, we're looking for 6+ years in this specific library. And then, if you have this, we're going to hire it. And the most interesting thing is the creator of that library, he comes out and he's like, look, I've just made this, this is into existence for past 4 years. Where do I get myself 2 years on that? And it's really interesting, and then I really like the point where you said, someone who's teaching for 30+ years, again, it's sort of takes that all, like the whole experience, and puts it on them rather than the learnings. I believe, and I really agree with you, that it's the learnings that which should be shared, rather than, okay, this is the hardwired stuff, you should be doing this to get this, to know this. Because again, we don't know, right? People in 2019 never knew that it's the lives are going to be completely changed in 2020, and the things that operate, or how we operate, it's going to change. And I really believe that, and I think so that comes with a really good connect between the student and instructor, right? And that's where I do also want to touch on this topic, where how is the student instructor relationship important to this? How much is that important?